example, has the bride's father's name, which Oddmarker doesn't. So if you've got them, always look at both, because one might be slightly different. And you can actually sometimes find that the last date the banns were read in one parish would be different to the last date the banns were read in another parish. So sometimes that's why people get slightly confused to think, well, what date were they actually married? Because it's the proclamation of the banns. Now, as I say,
not taking the information at face value. Just
yes, you've got to understand how it was used. This because these records are religious records. They're not written for state purposes. Albeit when official statutory registration came in, the General Register of Authors called in what they called the historic parish registers, and then later on said, right, well, we'll take the last 25 years of parish registers and stay with the local register, but after that, so by about 1875, they were calling in any other parish registers. So, for example, as I say, from Edinburgh, you or bigger cities, you'll quite often get the name of the father of the bride, perhaps his occupation. You might get the occupations of the groom, but you generally won't get the occupation of the woman, of the bride. They very rarely gave her occupation.
I always go back to my family certificate, and it was a train driver's wife or engine driver's wife.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing, for example, and I'm looking at an Edinburgh one here, is when they give the address, they say that Tolbooth Wine there, Robertson's land. Remember, if you see the word land in a city, a land is not a piece of land, it's a tenement. So when it says Tolbooth Wine there and Close Canongate, Robertson's land, and if you see that on, say for example, statute records, or certain in parish registers, land means a tenement. Because sometimes you might think, oh yeah, they had land. No, they didn't. So proclamations, divorce was straightforward in Scotland. There was no problem with divorce. We didn't have to have an act of parliament like England. So you could get divorced and get remarried. And it didn't have to be for a specific reason like England, where it was a lot more divorce was controlled. Now, when it comes on to burials, the church really wasn't too fussed about burials because you're in your coffin. What the church is interested in is the payments made for the burial. So the most common one is for the hire of mark cloths. Now the mark cloth is a cloth that goes over the coffin. And generally you'll find that most parishes had what they call a best mark cloth and a second mark cloth. And if your relative had the best one, you can probably think, well, they had a bit more money. And you might get small mark cloth, which would be for a child's coffin. Generally, most parishes, if they had any form of money, would have at least 4 mark cloths. And they always went over the coffin. The other thing you sometimes see payments for the tolling of the bell, erection of a gravestone. You won't always see, in fact, the date of death, what you might see is the date of burial. Now, generally speaking, apart from the big cities, you're not going to see the cause of death. They just simply say, John Smith, 76, died, dead or buried. You're not necessarily, so you're not going to see cities like Edinburgh and Glasgow, because they had more money, or their parishes had more money. And they had bigger municipal cemeteries. So, for example, in Edinburgh, we have Canongate, St Cuthbert's, Greyfriars. Their burial registers are much more comprehensive. They do tend to give ages with children relationships, or give the father's name anyway, usually give an address and quite often give a cause of death. So, for example, if you look at 1832 in Edinburgh, you're going to see a lot of people dying of cholera, because that was the big cholera epidemic here. You're not going to get that necessarily in rural parishes. Or very rarely, if it was a very unusual death, you might say, if it was a murder or somebody was found, that might be reported, but generally speaking, you won't always see cause of death. The important point date-wise as well to dealing with when we're dealing with church records is when the Free Church was created in 1843, when famous, you probably know Thomas Chalmers, the famous picture that's in the gallery at the Mount, and all the ministers going down. When the Church of Scotland virtually split, almost 2/3 walked out, particularly those ministers from the north. It was over the appointment of the ministers, because the landowner could appoint minister over the head of the congregation, and the congregations naturally said no, or the presbyteries said no. And that gives and that's the Free Church, not to be confused with the Free Church that we think of nowadays. The Free Church that we think of nowadays really came into creation in 1902, when there'd been a split in 1892 between the United Free Church and then the continuing Free Church. And that's partly why, if you walk around Scotland cities, you will see lots of church buildings, or you will see spaces where there was a church building. You know, you can sometimes spot the pillars. You walk past and you see pillars on a street, and you think that's not, and there's a block of flats.
Yeah.
And you sometimes think, I mean, I certainly there's one near me, and you can go, well, that's where the church probably was. But it would have been numerous, because parishes, you could find in a parish, particularly in the cities, because of all the Protestant churches, you might find that there's 6 or 7 or 8 churches, plus a Catholic church. Now, now Catholic church records, of course, are completely different. Catholicism didn't totally disappear from Scotland, but it tended to be in specific areas. So, for example, Glenlivet, Strathclass, bits of the Western Isles, mainly where the landowner was Catholic himself, like the Gordons in the northeast, and they to an extent had protected the Catholic Church. Their records now, some of their records are on the Scotland's People website, but to be honest, I would use Find My Past, because Find My Past has the Scottish Catholic Church records for the parishes that and where it exists, created post 1855, whereas Scotland's People has them purely for the parishes that were in existence prior to 1855. So that's fine if you come from an old established Catholic area like Glenlivet, but not so good if you were, say, dealing with some of the congregations in Edinburgh and Glasgow. So Find My Past, I would say, is definitely it. Now, to actually see these parish registers, the Scotland People website obviously has complete digital copies. Both the SGS and Aberdeen North East Family Society have complete collections of microfilms for the whole of Scotland. But obviously at the moment, you can't go and see them. Now, the indexes are free to look at on the Scotland People website. So the indexes to parish registers, or the whole PRs, I should say. Now, you will find indexes called Scottish indexes on Ancestry and Find My Past. These, in fact, are the indexes taken from Scotland's People, not the website. What, in fact, they did is they took the information from Family Search, because Family Search has got the parish register indexes. So, and of course, they are free to look at. So, if you don't subscribe to Ancestry or Find My Past, then obviously do have a look at Family Search.
Family Search is a great website.
It is, but do beware that if you've got ancestors from Shetland, they don't take into recognition that in Shetland, of course, they use patronymic names. Mm-hmm. So in other words, Jacobson, son of Jacob, that Family Search isn't necessarily clear on the use of patronymics. Mm-hmm. It does have that unfortunate fault with it, more for Shetland. And then it would be worth, obviously, with those particular areas, having a look at Shetland Family History Society's website and Orkney Family History Society's website, if you know you've got ancestors from the islands. The Western Island.
Is it quite worth being clear on what you're looking for in terms of that's a Catholic church, that's a church, just so you can, if you like?
Well, what I would say, and I'm going to back up the people on Scotland's people here, is do look at the Church Register's guide on the Scotland's People website. It does list all the Catholic church records they've got on the Scotland's People website. Mm-hmm. Now you can always Google the name of the church.
A good friend Google.
Yeah. Remember, of course, with statutory, remember, church records don't stop in 1855. Mm-hmm. Certainly, as far as they do continue on. And in fact, if you look on the Scotland's People website, what they've started putting on the Scotland's People website is some of the church records for some of the other Protestant churches. And if you look on there, so for example, if I look at Adria, it's got Wellwyn Associate United Presbyterian Church record. Mm-hmm. Now that could, the UPC comes in post 1855, so you've got church records that existed because the UP United Presbyterian churches came out of the secession churches. Mm-hmm. For example, in Banff, it's got Banff High United Free Church. High doesn't mean it, but that would be the church at the top of the town. Mm-hmm. When they talk about High United Free, it would just be. Mm-hmm. So you will find in there a list of churches. But remember that people, if they didn't like the minister, they could go off. They would go off and join another congregation, or for example, I mean, obviously, with the creation of the Free Church in 1843, a lot of congregations came out in mass. For example, in Nairnshire, every minister comes out, all 4 parishes come out, and virtually all the congregations come out. There might have been a slight pressure from the lairds to say, "Oh, right, you know, you've got to stick with the Church of Scotland." Mm-hmm. So you get two churches and congregations, and people would spot churches, possibly because perhaps they thought the minister was being more dictatorial. Certainly, for example, when it comes to Kirk Session records, for example, which is where you're dealing with discipline. Mm-hmm. And for example, particularly women with illegitimate children. Yeah. Being put in the stool.
I was thinking of, I mean, it's a bit maybe the wrong time period, but Robert Burns and his poem about the cutty stool, So.
Oh yeah. I mean, but Burns, of course, is notorious for philander. Yeah, yes, and he had various illegitimate children.
Oh yeah.
So he would have been. I mean, we had a talk at our society recently by the Registrar General, and it was, would Burns be granted a coat of arms? And the comment was the feeling that the church would definitely not have approved of Burns being granted a coat of arms because of his behaviour with certain ladies. Yeah. But you will find reference in what they call the Kirk Session records, which have been digitised and are available at National Records of Scotland. And I know they're doing their best to try and get them online And we'll see. And that's in our future podcast, Kirk Session Records. No doubt about that.